Of Q broadcast, it's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part, there are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens your spirit. It dulls your drive. And it robs you of what real intimacy is supposed to be. Every click is a step away from the man you're supposed to be. We can't call ourselves leaders if we are slaves to a screen.
As someone that is prior service, I know all about discipline. And discipline isn't out there, it's within your mind. Porn rewires your brain, weakens your will, wrecks all of your relationships. It doesn't just stay on a screen, it invades your marriage, your confidence, and your actual purpose. As men, if we don't learn to discipline ourselves, we'll be ruled by our impulses. Now, it is time to stand up and take control before this silent war takes more than you're willing to lose.
Real men don't hide in the shadows of shame. We step up and we protect what's ours. We fight for our wives and kids, our own hearts. Twitter isn't just an app, it's a weapon. It's a tool used to break free and start living like the man that you're meant to be. The battle's here and it starts with you. You can stop living in shame and you can break free today.
Of Q Broad.
Here at the Anomic Age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first and bow down to government tyranny. Gone are the days of freely leaving your home, working, and social interactions. In exchange for safety, we will trade liberty. At the Anomic Age, we understand. However, just in case you want to get off your knees and stop being a sniveling coward, check out the John Age Project at anomicage.com.
Meet Anne Morrissey, who is here with her daughter, Dareth. Dareth is 17 years old. Mrs. Morrissey, I don't have to tell you that most parents would be extremely depressed if their daughter came home one day looking like this. I assume that was your response. Shock, anger, depression? What was it?
I was extremely angry. I really went bananas.
Yeah, how old was she when this happened?
Possibly 13, 14 years old.
We're talking like it's a disease, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah. How did she explain it to you, Mrs. Morrison?
there was very poor communication until we went into counseling. And it almost broke up our family. But through counseling and Serena, I can understand it better.
What do you understand?
That she feels like she doesn't want to be like everyone else, and she wants to be her own person. And through the dress code and her lifestyle, she's expressing this. It doesn't conform with our rules, but we're learning to cope, and it's a very, very difficult thing. Extremely difficult.
Dareth, let's let you talk for yourself. You're from Long Beach, California.
I just can't handle being like everybody else because that's what everybody else wants, you know. Just because somebody else does something does not mean that I have to do it. You know, I have my own morals and ideals, and I go by them.
Are you drug-free, Dareth?
Yes, I am.
Is this a political statement then? Do you have some misgiving about the society that you see?
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, you know. A lot of the people are really aware of what's going on, you know, and I don't like it, you know. There's a lot of problems. I don't like the way society is based.
What bothers you? Give us some of the misgivings you have.
The rich, the poor, the people starving, the wars, you know. Why can't, you know, everybody just get along and just live their life?
Here at the Anomic Age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first and bow down to government.
You know something is wrong, and it's time to stand up. You are listening to the John Age Show.
Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one.
You found it. You're here. You're headlong down the runaway train that is the Anomic Age. And I am your host, John Age. Very happy to be back with you once again in the not so wee hours of the PM today. Please check out anomicage.com if you've not already done so. Like all the likes, subscribe to all the subscriptions. PayPal.me/anomicage, Patreon.com/anomicage as well. If you missed any of these shows, you can always go back there and pick those up. You got the free iPhone app, free Android app, subscribe by email link, and so much more right there at anomicage.com. So I can't underscore that enough. Please consider checking that out if you've not already done so. We got a wonderful guest today. I'm so pleased to have him back on the show. Mr. John Waters is with us. That's going to be johnwaters.ie. I'm putting that on the main screen for you there, or it should be. Hold on. There we go. johnwaters.ie is his website. And I love what he's got on his site there. Writer, editor, and columnist. He's definitely so much more. John's a journalist, magazine editor, and columnist. He is specialized in raising unpopular issues of public importance, including the representation of the Irish famine and the denial of fathers' rights. Several books out there. He's been on the show several times, and honored to have him back on, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. John Waters, for being with us today.
Thank you, John. Good to be with you again. I'm also, by the way, on Substack, John Waters at Substack, johnwaters.substack.com. So I write there all the time now. You know, that's kind of my main thing, you know.
Absolutely.
John Waters Unchained, Johnny Cash. Remember that song?
Absolutely, man. I love that stuff.
Great song, great man.
It's truth. And I hate to say that you're the first person I thought of when I was looking at all these riots going on in Dublin the other day, but it was. I know we've spoken several times, and I was kind of worried about you over there. I don't think you're that close to the fire, but nevertheless, you're the boots on the ground guy over there. What in the world's been going on in Dublin?
Well, I was out of the country myself that day, and didn't come back till the next evening. And I was hearing about it from various sources, and it was shocking. I mean, in many respects, in the way it came through, and because the news was that some children had been stabbed in a street near the centre of Dublin, and that was the first news. And then there was further news about the identity of the assailant, who was somebody who, he was from an African country who had come here 20 years ago, and all this information started to come out, but it was all unclear and very murky. And then the next thing, as the evening wore on, the story shifted, and was now that people were beginning to come onto the streets and protest. But then suddenly you were hearing that there were riots and looting and all of this stuff, and this had a kind of a familiar ring to it for me, because this is what the police do,
Exactly.
This is pretty much their primary function now, is to create massive trouble whenever there's anybody protesting in representation of an issue that the government finds inconvenient. So what they do is they send their interlopers in, they're agent provocateurs, they pretend to be on the side of the people who are demonstrating, and they start rows and they start fights and they start breaking things and smashing windows and all this sort of stuff. And of course the cops let them go for a while, and then they start battening all of the attendants, the normal people who are part of the demonstration. This is a standard thing. But the story is very, very murky yet, because overall, because they still haven't revealed the identities of the children, or even indicated, where they're from or anything like that. It's none of the normal kind of stuff that would follow journalistically on a story like this, where people would be talking to the neighbors, would be talking to family members, perhaps, that you would have interviews about this. No mention. There is no sense of who they are. There was a woman with them, or some kind of a care assistant with the school. I don't really understand that concept, really. But she was severely injured as well as one of the girls. Apparently, both of these, the woman and the girl, are, in a very serious condition in hospital, we are told. But frankly, we don't know what to believe. And it's very hard to say this, but, more and more in our country, it's impossible to believe anything that the authorities tell you, because they lie and lie and lie from morning till night, from Monday to Sunday, from January to December. That's all they seem to do. And of course, in the wake of this, immediately the so-called riots and looting and all that, the politicians come out. Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach Prime Minister, came out to say that they were trying to rush through hate speech laws to deal with all of this. And of course, then you have the sneaking suspicion that maybe there's something in this whole package that was about this in the first place. Now, I don't know what that is. I can't really say. But certainly the rioting, so-called, has all the hallmarks of a police operation. Because, there is video on the go of actually police riot squad in riot gear breaking windows, shop windows. Clear video of a man is challenging these guys. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And this is the kind of country we have now, John. This was a beautiful country that I grew up in. We didn't have anything like this. There was no such thing as, race wars or anything like this. We didn't have races, in Ireland. Ireland is an island it contained the Irish people for centuries, and we fought for centuries to regain autonomy and sovereignty in our own land. And almost as soon as we had attained it, or it even got to some level of sanctuary and peace, this started. And these people that we have now, supposedly our leaders, God knows where these guys came from. Like, they are the creeps of the earth. Really, they are the most disgusting people you would ever meet. Like, I don't understand what they're even in politics for. They're certainly not in politics for anything to do with the well-being of people. They are really deep interests who come into politics to undermine the system and to gain control of it on behalf of external agents. That's really what's happening. And the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Radker, is, a WEF baby, World Economic Forum, which I just remind people again, the World Economic Forum, WEF, if you spell it backwards, you get FEW. And that's what they are for, the few, against the many. And that is the function of these so-called politicians now. And that's really what this has been about. I mean, there are children, we are told, who are injured and within hours of that story, and people were still coming to terms with it, when suddenly the media changed the narrative into, oh my goodness, the department stores are having their windows broken, my dear. Oh, suddenly the children are forgotten. And so I don't know what to make of this, and then you see we're being told by these politicians that the people in the who are protesting and breaking windows and looting, they were the far right extremists. There are no far right extremists. I say it again. There are no far right extremists in Ireland. All there have been, so depicted by the creeps running this country, is people who question the policies of this government, question the criminality of these politicians, question the criminality of the police. They are not far right. They are ordinary, decent citizens, the kind of people who 10 years ago would have been the epitome of respectability in this society. And now they are treated as marginal lunatics or dangerous criminals. They are being defined more and more as domestic terrorists. As I noticed in America, this is the latest tendency now of politicians to immediately depict anybody who disagrees with the government, whether it's about mass migration or LGBT or abortion or any of these things, to depict these people as domestic terrorists, so that you've had women being arrested. Dinesh D'Souza has done a movie now about this recently called Police State, in which he depicts women who went to their school meetings to protest about the imposition of pornography on their children. Next morning, or within a very short time, they would receive visits from the FBI knocking down their doors and taking them away in chains. This is the kind of world we have. And see, America has a huge influence in Ireland now because of the economic factors, the corporations who are based here and so on. And they affected the influence of the Democratic Party, which is most malign in Ireland for many years now. And so this is where we are, John. It's as a brief sketch at this moment in our history. And the next step now is that they are going to try to implement, to put this legislation through. It's almost through, but it was stopped by a couple of people in the upper house, this hate speech legislation. They managed to stop it and get it postponed for a few months to have it examined and to look at it line by line. But it will probably pass. And I saw somebody drew my attention to Elon Musk, a tweet he put out there only, I think, yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to put it up there.
If this law goes through, then basically people will be imprisoned for putting out a meme or a picture or an article or a tweet which the government doesn't agree with. And that's its sole criterion, because they call it disinformation, but that's what they mean, because they have a monopoly on disinformation in Ireland now, as indeed governments all over the world have a monopoly on disinformation in their countries.
Man. And I already had the article put up, but the Irish police chief warns of further disruption by far right after Dublin riots. I mean, it's just so...
Yeah. And he's in a really good position, John, to predict that, because he's the guy who's organizing it. You see?
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy whose men are infiltrating any disgruntlement protest demonstration. They go in and they create these ructions, so that people out there, innocent people reading the lying, the pernicious, mendacious media, will think that there is some dark force prowling the land. The far right, the neo-Nazi, white supremacists, all this absolute gibberish, which
Exactly.
A 5-year-old child would laugh at. This is where we've come to in our country. Because and essentially that point, as I've made to you before, John, that's critical, because of course, if we had an honest press, none of this would be possible at all. It would be laughed out of court. It would be laughed off the pages in 24 hours. It would say, "Are you having what are you like? Do you think we're crazy? Do you think we're stupid? Please stop it."
And I got to be honest, I didn't even really think of the angle that you did, that this whole thing was provocateur, because it seems so obvious. I mean, it connects right into the January 6th mess here in the States, and even 9/11, where, oh, miraculously, we've got all these documents right after 9/11, and we can just roll in the body scanners and tighten the screws on rights in general. So,
John, it's very hard to I mean, again, if I grew up in this country. I'm 68 years of age. If I heard somebody 20 years ago saying what I'm about to say now, I'd have said that guy's a crazy extremist. But I know this to be true, that the police here, like on Garda Síochána, which is laughably called, is Irish for guardians of the peace. They are the direct antithesis of that now. There was an episode 2 years ago, which I wrote about at the time, where there was an alleged arson attack on a Masonic hall in Dublin by the anti-vaxxers. This was a story in the Irish Times, a so-called respectable newspaper, which I was once a columnist with. And the whole thing was set up, and there was graffiti on the street by which the anti-vaxxer had obligingly left there before he went in to do his business with the matches and so on. And it was something to do with anti-vax, but they didn't tell us what it was. And so I was investigating this, and there was supposed to be a man arrested at the scene, and he'd fallen out to a window, and he was in the hospital recuperating, but he would be charged. This man has never been charged. This man has never been revealed. His identity has never been revealed. I wrote an article at the time, which I published on my Substack, where with the use of photographs, which I'd obtained from somebody who'd taken a video, I was able to show that there had been no graffiti on the street at the time the fire was in progress. So either this man had miraculously recovered briefly from his injuries, wiped away the graffiti, and then went back and lay down on the ground, paralyzed or whatever he was. Yeah. Then this couldn't possibly have been anything to do with an arson attack. And of course, the whole thing disappeared. And there's never been any mention of it since. And the Irish Times hasn't sought to follow up its story. This is where we've come to, John. Then we've got to understand this. It's not, it's not that media are simply inadequate or even wicked. That's not adequate. They are actually not media. They are working as propagandists for criminals, for a criminal government, a criminal police force. It's really important that we understand this, because it's like say, oh, they should do better. No, they shouldn't do better. They should do nothing. They should go away. That's what they do. Go hand themselves in to a respectable police officer at the nearest police station, if you can find one. Who's honest, hand themselves in and report their own crimes against the Irish people. That's what I asked them to do.
It's so wild. I think so much of the quote unquote media now has just gone to pure fiction. And I kind of noticed this in the States. I mean, begrudgingly, I'm still a basketball fan, but I noticed this with basketball about 10, even 15 years ago. They started saying this. The commentators would mention the narrative. And I started picking up on that. I was like, I thought we were talking about a game. Who the bleep cares about the quote unquote narrative that's going on off the court? Or it doesn't matter. But it's kind of ironic. They took away they called them soap operas here in the States. During the day, they would have this little, the soap operas on for the housewives and stuff, would watch these little stories. They took all those off. And I feel like they've just suffused all of media with the narrative. It's not really about the fact anymore. It's just about the story, whether or not the story's right, wrong, fictional, just made up or pulled out of a hat. I think it's just narrative now.
But it's where the story fits into really a pseudo reality, but essentially a stage set, which has been built all the time, a pernicious, mendacious stage set, which is completely false. And which gives entirely wrong impressions of everything to the public, but with a precise purpose in order to manipulate them in certain directions, And a part of a central part of the ideology of this is what is called repressive tolerance, which is a concept invented by Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School nearly 100 years ago. He invented this idea like that. if somebody that you are opposed to is in a sense indefensible by your term, on your terms, it's all subjectivity. In other words, if you don't agree with them and you regard them as wicked, as evil in that sense, and you can, for example, Trump, right? Once you have decided, you're a journalist with the New York Times, once you have decided that Donald Trump is evil, then you do not have to extend to him any of the normative rights of a citizen or of a human being. You do not have to respect him in any way because he is an enemy of the good by your definition. And that idea is at the heart of all this, that the police force in Ireland and the government can actually behave as they do once they have identified their enemy, their opponent, as somebody who is beyond the reach of constitutionality or justice or anything like that. Then they can lie and lie and lie, and they can imprison these people with impunity without any question. And they've gone a long way in persuading the public, particularly the younger people, of this, by inventing these pseudo crimes of racism and homophobia and all that. And these people, it's amazing, like, to talk to these young people, that you begin to realize that it's quite frightening, that they think these things are real and they think they're actually serious, and that they're more serious than anything else. And that's what you've got to understand, that we're in a pseudo reality that is, like, as I say, a stage set, but like a three-dimensional stage set. It's like a hologram stage set with sound, with, it's everything is false in it. The thoughts are false. The ideas are false. You don't even know if something that they describe has actually happened.
Yeah.
You don't know, if this isn't actors on a streetscape, crisis actors creating a drama for some effect that has been organized separately, which has nothing that ostensibly to do with this, but which will be part of the reaction to this event, if you understand me.
Yeah.
This is now standard. This is like, for example, the Masonic fire, which almost succeeded had I not actually identified that it was completely false. I did an analysis also on the timelines and the impossibility of what they were saying, and the strange aspect that there were no direct witnesses coming forward to say, I saw this. And this is another characteristic of what's happened in Dublin. Very few witnesses coming forward. And the ones that have, there's something very odd about their delivery. It's very, very formulaic. It's like police tend to some of the, it's like sometimes you think you're listening to a police officer giving evidence to a court or something like that. Very strange things. I don't know what to make of them. I really hope that those children, if they are seriously injured, as they were told, that they are okay. I really do. But I really do also wonder why we have not been told who they are and where they live, so that the Irish people could gather around those people and support them in this situation, this awful situation, which, of course, if what we're told is true, has to do intrinsically with the policies of the government over many years in allowing people into this country without any vetting, without any preconditions, offering them all kinds of benefits, but requiring nothing in return, telling them that they can just do what they want. They don't have to integrate. They can, if Irish people make any demands on them, just call them racist, and that's enough. And they're educated, as it were, or coached in this, and by all accounts, the individual in this particular case, if we can believe a word that we're told, has been here for over 20 years. And in fact, on one occasion was ordered, it was issued with a deportation order. But you see, the policy of deportation in Ireland is what they call self-deportation. That's a very interesting concept. So you are ordered to leave the country, but you can decide if you're going to do it or not. And if you don't, then nobody was going to do anything about it. And actually, that's exactly what happened. And not alone that, but several years later, for some reason, that this man never worked a day in Ireland in his life, but he was made a full citizen of Ireland.
Jeepers,
man. Like, so this is not, this is not unusual. This is commonplace now. And the extraordinary thing about this, John, not extraordinary, but revolting aspect of it, is that this is being pushed on the people. Like, what we're seeing is literally hundreds of migrants arriving in tiny villages all over Ireland. A village of 300 people with a church, maybe a little hotel, and maybe, 100 houses. And suddenly buses arrive with 300 more people, strangers, unvetted, without papers, without any way of knowing who they are, where they come from. And if you complain about anything, then you're a racist. If you complain about any risk to your children, you're a racist. And people are now resorting to ridiculous kind of stratagems if they want to resist, to say, well, we don't have, enough facilities here to cope with all these people, which is a big mistake, by the way, because people don't realize that there is no shortage of money for these kind of destructive episodes. No shortage. It's fake money, and they just throw it at it. And so if you complain, for example, recently there's a situation where an old folks' home, an old person's home was reappropriated as an asylum centre. And the locals took that tack. And of course, it's very easy then to say, well, look, we'll give you a home here, over here. No problem. So you see, people need to be honest and say, look, we have built this community. Our people have built this community over hundreds of years to protect our families, to make sure our children are safe. You have no right, you, the government, have no right to come in here and assume ownership of this community and impose these people on us. Because you see, these creeps of politicians like Brad Creep, he says, the communities have no right to a veto over who comes into the community. Well, sorry, you don't seem to understand the meaning of the word community. Community is a group of people who have lived together consensually and who cooperate in particular ways. And therefore, they have an absolute right to decide who comes in. Nobody notices this most of the time because people come in ones and twos. And they're the kind of people who are recognizable to the community as their names are available. They're taxpayers. They have a history. Mm-hmm. It's not the same as 300 men. And they're all men, by the way, young men. Arriving in the middle of the night and the people being told, these are your new neighbors. Mm-hmm. So this is where we are. I've described this now, John, and I'm stunning myself. I'm stunning myself with these descriptions. I cannot believe these things are coming out of my mouth, that this is actually happening in my country, which for all my life was run by, some controversial guys over the years. But generally speaking, decent, solid, intelligent men and women who had principles and honor and respect for the people above all. And now we have these thugs who are like a bunch of brigands who have broken into our country and taken it over by force and are treating us with absolute contempt and condescension. And these people, then attack the Irish people or encourage these migrant proxies of theirs to attack the Irish people and call us names, call us racist. We are not racist. People come to this country, have always come to this country in an organic way and have been welcomed. Once you come, in a reasonable way, in reasonable numbers, and, you want to contribute to Ireland and you have something to say and something to do here, yes, come on. Nobody more welcoming than the Irish, but this is different. And they are constantly trying to erase that difference or the consciousness of that difference, even though it is absolutely obvious. But you see, this goes back again to the pseudo reality. That obviousness is not present when you have a false narrative all the time. Mm-hmm. So sorry to borrow that awful word. I hate it too. But the pseudo reality, when the pseudo reality is in place and the journaliers are manning that and ensuring that only certain things get said, then it's impossible to have conversations in which you point out rather obvious things, rather simple and straightforward things, which everybody knew up to the day before yesterday, but which now appear to have dissolved. That the idea that, for example, there's some kind of a comparison between what's happening now, 300 or 400 guys arriving in a village, in the latest gear with Nikes and Levi's and all this, and mm-hmm. top of the range suitcases and so on, and there's some connection between that and starving Irish people fleeing an imposed famine in their own land 170 years ago, and going to America to build America with their bare fucking hands.
That's ridiculous. That's
it's
blasphemous.
Disgusting. It is blasphemous, John. It is blasphemous.
And I love that you pointed out that it's literally bringing whole villages into a community. That's not an organic movement, folks. This is definitely orchestrated. You can't just move hundreds of people on a wing and a prayer. This isn't a refugee situation. Like you said, I mean, these people are wearing the latest clothes. They got the suitcases. They're not, knapsack on your back running across whatever. I don't even know how many, like 8 countries from where they're from, basically.
Yeah, but here's the extraordinary thing, John. I mean, in relation to, in the last couple of years, we've been taking huge numbers of Ukrainian refugees. Now, there's no question over the years, over the decades, Irish people would have absolutely zero objection to people fleeing a genuine war zone, to giving them shelter and succor and so on. But this is rather different because this war is orchestrated by NATO and including by the Irish government. And even though we're not supposed to be a member of NATO, we're essentially hand in glove with these same forces. And these people are being displaced by a war, we're told. But, Ukraine is 150 times the size of Ireland. The war in Ukraine has really only extended over a small portion of the territory of Ukraine. Kiev, for example, is untouched. Now, here's the extraordinary thing. The people are coming here and they're being paid immediately. They're given their promised accommodation in hotels and they're being paid something like 250 euros a week. In Denmark, the same kinds of refugees from Ukraine they get 7 euros a week, right? 7 versus 250. What's happening now? The second wave of Ukrainians is coming, i.e. those who heard that the money's better in Ireland than it is anywhere else. This is the kind of thing that's happening. And furthermore, we have heard now that Ukrainian refugees fleeing a war zone are being allowed to go back to Ukraine for Christmas on their holidays for 2 weeks. At the taxpayers' expense, of course. So we're being had in the most blatant way, but you see, by the bullying of the journaliers, and most people are cowed. A very interesting thing happened recently, John, that I found, because you're constantly trying to work out why, because there is a concept that I call mutism, where the Irish people have become mute, lockjawed in the face of all of this abuse. But I came across a very interesting thing in a particular town recently, where there was a threat of several. They had already taken huge numbers of migrants in this town, but there was another project to put them in a particular building, and the people were doing nothing but grumbling about it. But then something interesting happened. They had a meeting, and something like 1,800 people from the local community in quite a small town turned up at the meeting. And I was talking to a man who lived there, and he told me a very interesting thing. He said that there was this postwoman who went around the houses delivering letters. And every house she went to, she found a huge reaction. People were absolutely livid talking about this and really, really fearful and angry about it, but not talking to anybody else. And then she would go next door, the same thing, and next door, the same thing, and across the road, the same thing. And she realized that there's something missing here, and it's connectivity. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows this is wrong, but they're not able to talk to each other because of the pseudo-reality and the bullying. And so the impression is easily put out then that the Irish people are all good with all this, you see? Yeah. But she was able to, by talking to them, to persuade them all to come to the one place on the one night and begin to see they all felt the same way. And really, that's a wonderful parable of what needs to happen in Ireland and other places, I'm sure, about this, because this bullying about spell words like racist and so on is being used for so long to basically dispossess the indigenous peoples of so many countries. And now we're at the point where really it's almost too late to stop it. And we have to, this last time is the last chance saloon, try and pull ourselves together and resist these monsters before it's too late.
I love what you said there, that they were spell words. I've never heard that before, man. I got to use it. But it's so spot on, because it puts people in a spell. All you got to do is say some of these magic incantations, racist, sexist, homophobic, bigot, xenophobe, and then the person automatically gets in this subordinate state and kowtows down to whatever the narrative is.
That's right. And another thing that happens is that once somebody is, put into that state by some venomous spell maker, there is like this common, like almost like a kind of an aura, and a very dark, toxic aura seems to appear around them. So nobody will approach them.
Yes.
And it's like that they're afraid of contamination, of contagion with this spell that, and it's almost like, I think of it like, it's kind of like a cattle prod is used in culturally, whereby, you can actually stop people going in certain directions, talking, speaking in certain ways, thinking in certain directions, and people go, and everybody then watches and they back away, because I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want to be a racist. I don't want to be called that. There's not, no, please, anything but that. There's almost that sense that it has been made into the worst thing on earth. And one of the things we really have to do is grow up and actually say racist is just a word that these guys are using, and these guys are criminals. So what do you care what a criminal calls you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely stigmatizes people, like you said. And I mean, I've jokingly said this, but it's kind of spot on. It just, our whole society now is kind of like high school or something, where there's like the cool club and the not cool club. And, oh, did you hear John's a racist? Let's not talk to him anymore. And it's just so, but we're supposedly adults now. It's just hilarious, but not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's actually a TV sitcom over here, John, called Father Ted. It was made by Irish guys and was produced in Britain. But it's about these bunch of priests, and really it's very funny. But it's kind of like about, the basic underlying gag is, what do priests do all day after they've said mass,
Yeah.
And it's like their lives together, But there's one scene where one of them there's a thing where there's a kind of a racist thing, and one of them accidentally gets to kind of, be seen doing, the Nazi salute and this sort of stuff, but he's doing something else. But one of the catchphrases that came out of it was, the priest is walking, Father Ted is walking down the street, down the village, and this guy is standing in a field, and he says, "I hear you're a racist now, Father." And this is now, people now say this to me, and they think it's the funniest thing they ever said in their lives. They nearly fall off their bicycles when they say this, as if they've just thought of it. It's quite extraordinary. And it really does replicate that kind of what's happening in the pseudo reality, where people think that the things they're given are their own creations. Like I heard a woman the other night saying, just overheard a conversation with some people on a plane, about, the weather in Spain and the drought that's been on there for several years now. And then I heard one of them saying, well, I think it's climate change. That's what I think. That's what I think. And I thought, oh, right. How long did you spend thinking about this? Can I see your notes about, from your researches into this? Like this is the idiocy that we've been used to. People are just repeating lines they're being handed in this pseudo reality, but it's so cunningly constructed that it looks and feels real.
And the psychology of it is so connective here too, because kind of like you said, if there's a bunch of people in one spot, a la the Dublin incident, all someone's really got to do, police, provocateur, or the like, is start throwing a rock through a window, and they know the sheep-like mentality. Everybody will go, oh, well, now we got carte blanche. We can just do whatever the bleep we want. Let's throw some rocks and let's get stuff, Yeah.
But then also the other kind of group of people say, oh, the neo-Nazis are on the march. Yeah, we've got to bring in more repressive laws. We need more, control. We need new censorship laws. We need new laws about, curfews. We need whatever. We need another lockdown. Come on, let's go. It's this kind of stuff, like, and this is how totalitarianism descends on a country, in this way. Because it's all created events which could then spark a particular reaction in the public, usually of fear. And the next thing, the government say, well, we have the solution, You just don't go out, you just don't leave your house. Well, you'll be okay then. We'll look after you. We'll deliver your food through the window by drone. Okay? No problem.
And I think the COVID op was kind of one of the early harbingers of this. They were getting everybody used to, let's just get everything from takeout. Let's get the groceries delivered. Let's just self-isolate, and then they're going to start these different ops or false flags to pull people right into the fold.
That was really a massive rehearsal for all of this now. You know, this is all they're doing. They just ran out a kind of a test run, and then they saw how different things flew or didn't. Most of them did fly, and now they're just beginning to do them for real. You know, like as if that was just you know, for a couple of years just to see how things would go. You know, it was all supposed to be 2 weeks in the beginning, but it ended up being 2 years, and now it's going to be the rest of time as far as they're concerned.
And I mean, when you were talking about this sort of alternate narrative of this whole thing, I love that, because I didn't even really think of it through that context, but it's so spot on when you look at this whole thing. Like, who are the children? Who are the people assaulted? And they kind of made it a perfect storm, because people can then say, oh, well, they're children, we can't release the names. Like, they've already sort of padded the books here for questions people might have with this whole thing. But
that you see, that's something that people might think or say to each other, but it's actually not true. It's not the way journalists have behaved in the past. You know, there are certain contexts in which you would not reveal the identities of children if there was like family disputes or something like that. But in a situation where there's been a vicious attack in public on children, you know, you would know the names of the children within hours. There's no reason not to tell people who they are, and there's no taboo, there's no stigma, there's no shame accruing to the family or to the children arising, and there's no danger, further danger accruing to the family. Would be nothing but support from the community. I mean, it's quite bizarre, you know, but you know, the first responders, as it were, the people who arrived first, there was some dispute about it, because the word went out, and this is very interesting as well, that it was a Brazilian migrant to Ireland who was the first on the scene and who had tackled the assailant by throwing his crash helmet at him and hit him on the head. And that person has now there's been a GoFundMe for that guy because he's a Brazilian migrant, and they've got, believe it, I swear, 350. The last I heard was over 300,000 euros. I'll say that again, 300,000 euros. But it turns out he's not even the first guy that was there. There's another guy, an Irish guy, and he hasn't. They've done they belatedly did for one, and I think he's up to about $8,000 now, as opposed to, you know, $300. The other guy's heading fast for $500,000. Like, this is how insane Ireland has become. You know, that the desire to virtue signaling under the headings of, you know, racism and so as to avoid that spell being ever imposed upon you, to create a kind of an antidote to the spell. People are prepared to engage in any form of insanity, any kind of self-abasement, any kind of exhibition of self-hatred, any kind of, you know, renunciation of their nationhood, of their history. Whatever it takes, they will do it in order not to be called these terrible names.
And it seems to me like they always kind of give you a little bit of truth with the lie, because I think a lot of people are going, well, there is this illegal immigration problem. There is violence against the Irish in the streets. There is these no-go zones in parts of Europe and the like. So this makes sense that people would be outraged enough to take this to the streets. And then you got provocateurs just sort of fanning the flames and going, look, you know, like invasion from the body snatcher, like shrieking and pointing at them, you know?
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, you know, I stopped going anywhere. I mean, in the very beginning of the lockdown, I went out on some marches and so on, you know, but I realized this very quickly, that a lot of the people that you would see, you know, leading these events, you wouldn't even know who they were, but they would be loudmouths and roughnecks, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and it was not the kind of feel that you wanted in an event like this. I mean, in an event like this, you want to speak from the heart, from the soul, about freedom and these issues. But these people were just screaming abuse at the police or whatever it was, and, you know, banging on plate glass windows, threatening to break them and all this kind of stuff. I said, no, that's not for me. And I actually proposed at the time a mode of protest, which I thought would be more appropriate. You know, that I saw it initially some years ago by a group called the Sentinelli in Piedi, the Standing Sentinels. And what they did in a situation where there was an issue that they were mobilized on, they would just simply turn up at the government buildings or whatever it would be, official, in town square, whatever. And each one would have a book, any book, and they would stand a meter apart, in phalanxes, in the square or whatever, and read silently from this book in front of the authorities. And I thought it was a very powerful statement, the silence, the passivity, and yet the presence, the moral statement that represented was far more effective than, screaming and shouting and kicking and all that stuff that you see in so many of these protests. And because that's what the authorities want. They want to, because they have a monopoly on state violence, on violence, on official licensed violence, and they can do it far better than any bunch of citizens can do it.
I mean, it's like here in the States, I've said many times on the show, I wouldn't go to any of this mess anymore because it's all provocateur. No matter what quote unquote group it is, it's almost always a Fed involved. And before you know it, it'll turn from a sit-in to a full-blown riot if they just throw enough rocks or get some provocateurs to push some cops or whatever. I mean, it's a mess.
I know that myself, I remember being in Washington there a few years ago and there was some event upcoming, and I remember seeing, bags of rocks left along the path of where the demonstration would be going along. I thought, this is interesting, isn't it? Like, this is what we've come to. You see, this is extraordinary, John, when you start to, meditate on it as the meaning of it, because it means that the purpose of government is no longer in service of the people, to make life easier for the people, to serve the people, to give the people the things they need that the government can supply. And it's now really to manipulate reality on behalf of some hidden sponsors who want to manipulate the people in different directions. And that's now what government is. And that's a very scary thought when you start to think about it. What does it actually mean in its granular nature? Like, what exactly, and we see it, what is going on now is really the granular nature of it. It's pretty clear to us now that they want to basically return us to a neo-feudal reality, post-work, post-human meaningfulness, post, the world that we have known all our lives, in a world which will be, the people will live in, hive cities, in little pod apartments, and they will be sitting with screens all day and be allowed perhaps out for an hour of exercise, and they will have the delivery of food, whatever, twice a day or whatever it would be. And this will be the life of the human.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't take a genius, given what we know about human nature, to work out where that's going to lead. It's going to lead to the obsolescence of the human race and its eventual removal from the planet. Because of course this will also be accompanied by, the end of organic procreation. That will become, this is their plan. I mean, and essentially the desouling of the human being, where the human being is inducted into a machine, into a computer, and offered the bribe or the bait of superintelligence. But of course, the superintelligence will be utterly controlled by the sponsors. We're going into a dark age, John, and it in some respects, I have mixed feelings, because on the one hand, I feel a surge of relief that I am old now. But then the second thought is, well, no, there are people I love that I cannot leave to this horror, and I have to fight it while there is a breath in me, even if I never live to see the fruits of that battle. Because this is the most important thing that's ever happened, I believe, to the human race. This is the end of everything, unless we can turn it around. This is a very interesting, if you look back, John, I remember, because this crept up on us, and I've been doing a bit of writing about this recently and thinking about it, and then looking back at my own experience, and some things, they just, they come dropping slow, but they finally do drop into your consciousness. And I realized that, all that prosperity in the world that we've had in the West, that we've had, say, in the period, say, from the 90s through into the 2008 or so, there was a purpose to that, you know. It was really, that was to distract the people while something vitally important was being done. And that thing was that the technological revolution that was in train was being directed in a certain way into the control of certain interests and into a monopoly situation where the people would have no democratic control over what happened as a result of this. So, like when I go back, when I was a young man as an editor of magazines, kind of left-leaning magazines back in the 90s, in the 80s, in the mid-80s, we started to do articles about the future of work. You know, what are human beings going to do when machines take on all the work, and you know, how are we going to distribute resources and income and so on. And these kind of philosophical questions were very big. I'm talking about the mid 80s. But then the prosperity descended and all those questions disappeared. And everybody said, sure, we're fine now. What's to talk? What's to worry about? Stop talking about all that stuff. You know, you're negative. You know, we want to enjoy life, you know. And then we come to 2008 and then 2010, 11, 12. And by the time the second decade of the millennium comes in, it's beginning to be clear that the world is kind of changed under our feet, and that all of this new technology is now there, but it's in the control of a very tyrannical system, and that it is not in any way democratic. That the people, it doesn't matter what they think they should do with their time. It doesn't matter what they think, how they think they should distribute money. The money no longer belongs to them. You know, it's not their unit of exchange and value. It's something that is given to them grudgingly as a concession. And all of this has been happening. And then you find, oh, look who's written a book about all this. Oh, Henry Kissinger. Oh my God, who knew that Henry was there all the time taking charge of all this? You know, and this is what's happened. And then when you actually see what's happened then when you go into the kind of relationship between humanity and money and power, and think that all our lives, John, my life, I've listened to liberals. I used to be kind of a liberal way back when I was a young guy, you know, as you are, but then I kind of copped on, you know, and realized this is all bullshit, really. Yeah. But I at least thought that those guys were sincere and they believed what they said, until the Ides of March 2020, when it became abundantly clear that they didn't mean anything and they didn't believe in anything, because they never said a word when all of these things were taken away, were scrapped. And so, you know, we're here now in this situation where all the things that they ranted and raved about, the man, you know, the guy who controlled everything, the corporations and all this, these guys have been siphoning upwards to themselves all the wealth of the world. You know, like apparently there's a computer now, Aladdin, which is owned by BlackRock, Larry Fink, which controls something like over 20 trillion of the world's resources, which is more than the GDP of the United States, and far more than that of the European Union. And these guys have just been hoovering up that, if they don't understand that word, that they've been vacuuming up this wealth. And all these liberals and lefties have been talking about gay rights and, you know, abortion and migration and everything, and they're not seeing it. And now it's over. It's been done. It's a crime, of course. Yeah. And could still be reversed if we had an ethical leadership in the world, political leadership, a democratic leadership. All they would have to do, if I became the leader of Ireland, I would go to the United Nations and say, look, this has been a crime. This is what we do. We dismantle them in the money system. We arrest the malefactors and we put them in jail. And then we construct the money system and we wipe out any liabilities arising falsely, fraudulently from that money system, because it was little more than a 3-card trick. And then we go on and we restore money as the unit of exchange for human work and human reward. And we actually go back to creating a world worth living in. But that's the last thing on anybody's mind now, and certainly the last thing on the mind of Leo Varadkar, or Brad Creep, as I call him, the Prime Minister of Ireland. God help us.
That's the truth, I swear. And I love the way you said that, because I don't think anybody's really said that, at least not on this show before. But so much of these creature comforts have definitely just been I look at it as like golden handcuffs or like a gilded cage. People have all these creature comforts and they think, oh, wow, look at all the great stuff. I can just run through the checkout line and check myself out. I don't have to go to a person.
Oh,
You know, like
yeah.
so much of this stuff. And I know people look at the current generation as not knowing how to do anything. I do that as well. I don't think they do know how to do anything. But to the point, I think they haven't been taught how to do so many things that you and I figured out, like how to change the a tire, how to just do stuff in the yard. Just basic skills are just gone. And I think it's kind of just that we're not going to have to do that, so don't worry about it. Like we're not going to have to do math, so we got this calculator. We're research the way we did it in a library or with microfiche is just not even a thing, you know.
I couldn't believe it there a few years ago when my wife told me that, you know, if you got a puncture now, that you just rang the insurance company and they would come and tow you back to the nearest garage.
Yeah.
To have your puncture fixed. I mean, like if you got a puncture when I was a kid with my father, you knew you had to get out in the rain and change it. You know, it wasn't pleasant, but that was life. That was the way it was. That was reality. But you know, there's so many things kids don't know. Like, I mean, for example, like there's sort of mantras or sayings that we used to have, which are now meaningless in a certain sense within the frame we're talking about. One of them is, you know, no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, if we'd remember that with all this technology, we would have said, what's the problem? What's going on here? Why are they giving us all this free stuff technological? Why are phones so cheap? Why are, you know, what's going on? Well, the answer is very simple. If it's free, you're the product. Exactly. And that's what's happened. We've been turned into the product. Human race has been turned into a product. And now we're, in a certain sense, I can see why these guys are so impatient, because we're squawking because, you know, we think we're citizens. We think we're humans. And they say, they don't say this if they're politicians, they don't say, but this is what they mean. They say, you're not humans. You're not citizens. You're slaves. Shut up and listen. That's the deal. So we're going to have to reverse that. And to get that, we need ethical men and women prepared to take on the burden of public responsibility, to take on these guys and deal with them and ensure, you know, that somehow or other we reconstruct the world so that these guys can be called to account and that their crimes can be revealed to the whole world and that none of this can ever happen again.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're running a bit short of time, but I got to throw this question out there too, because you're closer to this than I am. What's your take on what's going down with Spain? I think they're up to day 23 of their in the streets protests. I mean, kind of like I think we saw something fairly similar in France a couple months back, and now it's Spain. I mean, the bright side of me wants to say, great, it looks like the people are stepping out against the tyranny, but like to your point, it could all be a provocateur job. I don't know. What do you think of what's going on?
I don't think it is. I mean, I was in Spain last week. I go there quite a bit, and I love Spain. I love parts of it. I mean, some parts, there are dark elements to the Spanish character and history, you know, and we can't, you know, blind ourselves to those. But you know, I guess there's kinds of things in all countries. Blood-soaked fields, you know, it's not uncommon. But you know, what's happened there is essentially that Sanchez, the president, almost got kicked out in the summer in an election, but he's managed to hold on, and now he's cobbled together a coalition with the Catalans, you know, who were a few years ago were criminals, where he was trying to put them in jail. He was putting them in jail, and the judiciary. Because of their insurrection in Catalonia and so on, and they were being, you know, charged with subversion and so on. But now he's prepared to do deals with them, and he's going into government at the federal level with them. And the people of Spain, in quite huge numbers, are rejecting this. And I think that's genuine. I mean, from what I can talk, people are outraged by it. Even left-wing people are outraged by it. You know, people who are traditional leftists. You know, of course, woke people don't understand anything, so they don't care. They think whoever wins, if you're on the winning side, that's all that counts. But the old-style leftists, and there's a lot of those around Spain. They think, you know, this isn't good. This isn't good. This is a coup. You know, And that's really what's going on there. So you see, I think it is a coup. I mean, I think it's a World Economic Forum coup, because Sanchez is a classical World Economic Forum, as Cliff High calls them, mother weffers, you know. So I think that's what's going on. And you know, and it's very interesting because, you know, I look at Spain and, you know, where we go in Andalusia, which is down the south, you know, it's the kind of where the Costa del Sol is, but we're in bit inland we go, and it's a beautiful part of Spain and really historically very, very rich and so on. And what I find in the villages of Spain, like it's like going back to my childhood, you know, in the west of Ireland. It's like small towns, and you know, just people being decent and friendly and helpful and you know, ethical and not like we spent 10 days, myself and my wife spent 10 days there recently, and we were in Malaga for a couple of days, and we went into the old city, you know, and it's just wonderful in there. It's like Rome, you know, and it's like, in a way, you know, but of course it's Spain, and it's really, you come away feeling like, for somebody who's been like in Ireland all my life, and for the last 2 years, the horrors of Ireland, you know, I just felt all of the weight, all of the for the last, you know, few years, I felt that like gravity was being turned up around me, and it was crushing into my bones, like into my neck and into my skull, you know. Yeah. And then to be able to go there and experience this, you think, oh, life exists still, you know, humanity exists still on the planet. And then I come back, and of course, from the minute I come back, the horror starts again. Literally, I'm attacked by a woman in the airport for starting the riots in Dublin the night before, and you know, a policeman is rude to me at the passport office, and I get into a row with him, and you know, and then I come out and drive my car, and next thing, what I nearly drive over a young guy, you know, on the street. I was lying prone on the road in the dark, absolutely paralytic from alcohol. And luckily, my wife shouts at the last minute, or I would have amputated his 2 legs, because there's no lights properly, you know. And I thought, you know, it just looked like, you know, some scraps of paper or something. But then I stopped, and I went back, and I picked him up. You know, he's only a young lad, beautiful lad, you know, beautiful young man. And I said, "What's your name?" And you know, and he told me, Jay. And I said, "Where do you live, Jay? You know, can we take you home?" No, I'm okay. And he wasn't, you know. But eventually, he said, "I'm going to go." I that way, and off he went. And it's just heartbreaking, because this is a sign of, you know, I'm an alcoholic, you know, and I remember that could have been me, not that many years ago, you know. Well, quite a few years ago, but I saw myself lying there, you know. Yeah. And I know that this is all spiritual disease. You don't see this in countries in Europe so much, like Italy and Spain. You don't see this kind of thing, and this is spiritual sickness, you know, for sure, at the societal level. You know, it's complex, and it's not a simple thing at all, and not a black and white thing. But it's, you know, this is when you have a country that has no longer any direction, no longer any hope. These guys, these young people, they can't ever hope now, because of the economic situation and the way prices of houses. They can't hope to have a home and a family, really, in this country, in their own country. And yet the government that is denying them that is flooding this country with indifferent aliens who have no regard for Ireland, never mind a love, who are here with their hands out demanding benefits and houses and freebies of all kinds, and abusing the indigenous population as racists. Like, that's the kind of country we have now, John. And that's, so, you know, I'm glad you asked me that question about Spain, because that contrast really struck me very strongly. And I don't know if that's just Andalusia. I haven't been up in Madrid or those places for a long time. I would imagine those places are nothing like as nice as Andalusia is, certainly, because all that woke madness has invaded the bigger cities. But Malaga is untouched, I have to say, and that's good. But there you go. I mean, it's Europe is pretty bad shape. You know, I mean, I know the economic situation is really dismal. I know we're on the verge of a massive meltdown. I don't know when it'll come, because they're regulating that as well. You know, but it is going to come. It has to come. And in fact, they're going to engineer it at a particular time when it suits them. But the people have no idea about anything
Mm.
that they except that what the regime wants them to know, and
To
that's
me,
very.
to me, it sounds like it's kind of a twofold thing, but I think the bottom line, it sounds like a cultural death of so many of these countries throughout Europe, and the same things here in the States, for heaven's sakes. I mean, I've just covered our cultural death for years. I feel like just different parts of it, but there's no hope in so many people, and there's no vestige of that culture, that morality, that Christendom. I mean, to get blunt with everybody, that was in so much of Europe. I mean, you like you mentioned, just people taking care of each other like you did to this guy on the road. I don't know that you'd see that in a lot of these cities in the States, surely, and not in Europe either. But I mean,
No,
that
because
conversation with the checkout girl, the guy that fixes your car or what have you, it just doesn't seem like it's there anymore.
yeah, that's right. I mean, because a lot of people would be afraid in that situation. This was some kind of sting.
Yeah, I would too.
And that's always a chance. But I can't say, look, I can't leave this place and leave that lad lying there. I didn't know who he was. I couldn't make out his age or anything. But that man, whoever he was, I knew he was a man.
Yeah.
And I knew he was alive because there was a little bit of motion. But that's really so much. You see what you've touched the nerve there. Talking about Christendom, because that's the core of it, John. It's not, and it's not that we need to go back to crowd thumping or anything like that. Or it's about the demeanor of the human person in reality. Because if a society and a culture vivifies that person to have them upright in reality, rather than, as it were, prone on the ground, but upright.
Yeah.
Walking purposefully through this dimension in the direction that we intuit our destination lies in, our destiny lies in. That's the Christian reflex in culture, in social reality. And that's gone. Mm-hmm. See, it's not just the kind of the morality in the text, the commandments and all that stuff that's gone. It's the understanding of how reality is structured. And that ultimately, whether you believe it or not, you go into school and you learn that heaven, there is a destination which is beyond you. There is a being, the creator, who is beyond you, who is greater than you. And even if you reject that at an intellectual level, somehow through your life, I think for many people, especially if you're surrounded by people who continue to believe in it, absolutely, you are able to avail of that radiation, that background radiation. And once that's now drying up in our cultures, you see, and the result is that we're beginning to slump. We're developing humps, and we're going to bend over in the ground. We're going to be crawling around on our hands and knees before long if we don't start to understand what we've done to ourselves. And I really do believe that. I think that there needs to be a renaissance of religious transcendent thinking. I would put it like that, transcendent thinking, because you cannot. A human being, it seems to me, the evidence is clear. A human being cannot function fully for long without a transcendent imagination.
Mm-hmm. That's so true, man. I mean, I hate to stop us. I just want to keep talking about this, but I think you nailed it so good when you talked about that guy on the road, because you saw yourself in that guy on the road. And I think through the spell words like fear, let's just ride on by. Let's don't worry about that. I think these spell words have taken the humanity out of us. That's taken that guy could be me. I need to go help that guy that is on the side of the road trying to fix a tire at 10 o'clock at night or what have you,
Well, it's very funny, John, but that's exactly, my wife asked me afterwards, what was his name? And without thinking, I just repeated his name.
Yeah.
And I said, Jay. Oh, it struck me. This is me, Jay, John. Yeah. This is me. I met myself on the road.
Mm-hmm.
30 years, 40 years ago, the way I was 40 years ago.
That's chilling.
And that was the meaning of the whole thing, and I think more and more, John, in my life, I see this, incredible as it may seem, that it's like that I am now in the final act of a drama, of a play, in which all of the elements that were set up in the first two acts are now converging. And I'm being called to some purpose. And I think perhaps every life is supposed to be like that. I don't know, because I only have my own. And I don't hear people talking about these things, because they talk as if everything is random. And, but I don't think that the things are random at all. I don't believe in random. I believe that, random is an absurd idea, really. It's just that we don't really pay attention to what's going on. So this is what I think that episode really, it's I don't want to in any way big myself up, about it, because what I did was very little. And in fact, I felt when he had gone, did I do enough? Like, did I, should I have insisted? Should I have pulled him into the car? But he was walking away, and it was almost comical, because he knew that if he had to walk fast or he would fall, he was taking off at a rate of knots. So I said, well, please God, he'll get home safely wherever home is.
That's true. I mean, I think we're hardwired to try to help each other and to try to do exactly what you did. It's so true, man.
There is a Christian empathy that we don't recognize, that we think that empathy is something naturalistic in humans. No, it's a culture, enculturated. And there's a Christian empathy, the Good Samaritan, that story, these mythologies are in my bones. Like, it's not me that's good. It's that these mythologies remind me of who I am and who others are. And I would hope that in that way, we can somehow recover what we've lost in this absolutely extraordinary, almost ubiquitous sense. We've lost everything. But is it too late? I hope not.
I hope not too. Well, John, man, I hate to end our conversation, but we've run over an hour here. We could run a couple more, I know, man. But what's the best place for people to find your work? I know you're on Substack as well as the John Waters IE.
Yeah, John Waters on Change, johnwaters.substack.com. You get me there. I do a couple of articles every week, and videos or whatever, and interviews. I'll be putting this interview up, so whatever, I always do that. But yeah, that's what I do. And I mean, I'm hoping next year I'm going to bring out some books of the material I've been writing in for the last few years, which is like up to about 2 million words now, which I've made up, is 21 volumes. So it's going to be a busy year, John,
That sounds great, man. It's inspiring. I love the work you're doing. So thank you so much, John. If you'll stick around for a second, I'll say goodbye to you off the air after I close up here. Perfect. Well, folks, if you missed any of that, fear not. You can rewind it and listen to it all over again. That's what I would recommend. Take some notes. You need to. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Please try to get out there, do your part, make a difference. I'll be seeing you sooner than later in the Anomic Age.
Thank you for listening to The Anomic Age, a John Age project. For past shows, further info, and to comment, go to anomicage.com. That's ANOMICAGE.com. Till next time, thank you for listening to The Anomic Age.
Yeah.